AI is going to radically remake finance.
What I think is surprising, though, is how quickly banks are adopting AI.
Yeah. Today, I'm talking to Jenny on the go-to-market and partnerships team at OpenAI. She has a front row seat to how these changes are taking place in the wild.
They basically created the smartest intern they've ever hired that never gets tired to support their wealth management division, basically making all of their wealth managers be able to spend more time with clients.
Her hot take, which frankly I find a little hard to believe, is that banks are adopting AI faster than fintech.
They've done something like 9 million lines of COBOL code review and using our reasoning models to translate that into a human readable spec, saving something like 280,000 hours of engineering time.
To see the extent to which that's true, today we're going to cover 3 stories of how banks are adopting AI.
So one to start is BBVA.
And 3 stories of how fintechs are adopting AI. And you can be the judge. We're also going to cover where she sees AI and financial services headed in the next 12 months. All right, well, Jenny, thanks so much for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me.
Before we talk about how fintechs are using AI and how banks are using AI, just first want to hear your story of how you ended up in your current role.
Sure. So I spent a decade plus in financial services and fintech before joining OpenAI and wore multiple hats. Started as an investment banker, was a financial inclusion investor at a mid-year network in Flourish Ventures. Knew that I always wanted to build, so jumped into building at Modern Treasury. I worked at BTB in early stage investing, and tried my hand as a founder thinking about how alternative data and AI could help small businesses onboard into formal financial services. And I had this opportunity to join the early go-to-market API team at OpenAI and realized that this kind of foundational technology and the way that I had loved financial services is a foundational technology that changes education or healthcare. There was this new wave that was fundamentally going to change, I think, how everything got done.
Yeah.
So it was just too exciting not to want to jump on board, and the team was incredible. So I joined OpenAI about 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
Spent my
was
first
that
year
before or after the groundbreaking demo of ChatGPT?
just after.
Just after.
Just after.
Right, yeah. So you'd been in process before, but then ended up joining right after.
Exactly.
Pretty good timing.
Pretty good timing.
Well, great. And let's dive in now in terms of how banks are starting to use AI. So you have something that I find a little surprising, which is you think that banks are moving faster in many ways than fintechs. So I thought we'd just dive into some specific examples.
Sure. Well, so yeah, that phrase I think is important to unpack even at the highest level, because of course fintechs are adopting AI.
Yeah.
That's not surprising. Fintechs, by definition, are utilizing the technology of the day to figure out how we can change the banking system, can change the insurance system, et cetera. So that's not surprising. And we're seeing some really interesting novel new use cases of both APIs as well as ChatGPT from a productivity perspective internally that we can talk through. What I think is surprising, though, is how quickly banks are adopting AI, right? You think about these incredibly large behemoths with tons of manual labor. Like in some ways, it makes a lot of sense. In some ways, it's just fundamentally surprising because banks have not been early adopters of technology. But in this wave, they are jumping in.
And one anecdote I like to share there is I think AWS launched around 2005, and the first cloud installation by a major bank of a cloud-based core, I think, was 2021. So like 16 years after the cloud, you had the first of a core system. But AI, it seems to be quite different.
It is quite different, right? Banks have tons of manual processes and systems. Talk about a perfect challenge to point AI to. It has highly skilled, expensive human capital that could be much more productive and basically be made superhuman with internal productivity tools with AI. You also have macro changes that are putting pressure on banks' balance sheets with interest rates, et cetera. So there's a real moment for banks to fight Clayton Christensen's innovator's dilemma, where you can actually start to transform yourself from within and have that magical equation balance of driving costs down while increasing revenue. And banks doing that and they're doing it so quickly that I think they have a chance of potentially staving off what could have been a much more challenging world where fintechs are really running hot on their tails. So yeah, it's been incredible to see the adoption writ large across both fintechs and banks, but the speed of which these incredibly large international banks are adopting AI is phenomenal.
And let's get the update on Morgan Stanley, because we had your colleague James on earlier, and he talked about how their wealth management division was using it for note-taking and some other stuff. But now they're using it for something completely different. So what is that?
Yeah.
Why does it matter?
Well, yeah. I mean, what Morgan Stanley,
They're still doing the other thing.
they're still,
but now they're doing something
within their
else
wealth management division. They basically created the smartest intern they've ever hired that never gets tired to support their wealth management division, basically making all of their wealth managers be able to spend more time with clients, deliver better answers faster. I think it also makes me go back to the adage of like, do what makes your beer taste better. Like Jeff Bezos, where early breweries would spend time building out their own electricity, but fundamentally the breweries that won were the ones that focused on what made their beer taste better and just bought electricity off the grid. I think in the same way with banks and AI, I think about banks, it's really about trust, customer support, customer success, building deep personal relationships. And AI has the ability to just get away all the rote manual labor and just have this type of interaction much more often. So Morgan Stanley was such a leader in doing that. And now they're starting to think about internally how they can also turn the
so
technology
this is the new thing that works.
So the new thing, they've been updating their COBOL stack.
Yeah.
And COBOL, everyone's always talked about, well, core banking is never going to change because the engineers that wrote the systems don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
They're all retired. Well, turns out ChatGPT and OpenAI's APIs are incredibly strong translators. Mm-hmm. So they've done something like 9 million lines of COBOL code review and using our reasoning models to translate that into a human-readable spec that then can be used for basically updating their entire core stack, saving something like 280,000 hours of engineering time. So
well over probably $30 million worth of human labor for updating.
You can start to think that these things have a pretty nice ROI. But just, I mean, so exciting that I think, years ago, but not even too many years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, we were talking about how, legacy banking systems could never update because we just don't understand COBOL. Nobody even knows how to code in it anymore. And it turns out API models are quite good at it.
Yeah, I think back to, a lot of the largest banks, they just grew through acquisitions. And so you see this front end of the bank and you see all your products on the screen and you think, oh, that's my bank. It's all like unified. But then you look under the hood and it's actually like one core is here from like one acquisition and none of them talk to each other. And when you pay your credit card bill, it actually takes like a week to show up. And you're like, this is crazy. And for a long time, it seemed impossible to fix that. But now maybe they can actually reconcile. And the integration would take maybe 4 years of a new acquisition or longer.
I think this type of systems transformation, which is fundamentally it's a data and a translation issue, are really strong candidates for thinking about how you can use AI to transform them. So super excited to see what Morgan Stanley is doing. I think we're going to see a lot of bank follows in their footsteps in the same way.
And where are they with that 9 million lines of COBOL? Have they actually fully translated and put it back in production, or are they still working on getting it?
I think it's
teed up,
starting to get into production. But think about something that would have taken months is right now taking weeks. Is going to start to take hours.
Cool. No, that's a great update on Morgan Stanley. And you had some other banks I think you wanted to highlight too.
Sure. Tons. BNY, BBVA, Morgan Stanley, Commonwealth Bank of Australia, some of the Santander, the largest banks in the world are having 80% plus weekly adoption of ChatGPT Enterprise, and saving hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of hours. So one to start is BBVA, right? One of the largest banks across Europe, LATAM, and the US. They have something like 125,000 employees. They took a strategy, but I think is such a winning strategy, but is really a give the people what they want. Right? ChatGPT is being used by 800 million plus weekly active users across the globe. So people are using ChatGPT in their daily lives and they're loving it. And they're finding more and more ways that it's helping them. So you better believe that if you're in a business, people are likely using ChatGPT or some other form of consumer AI to help them do their job better. So what BBVA said, great, we're going to roll out a huge deployment of ChatGPT Enterprise and make sure that AI becomes part of the DNA and is celebrated in what people are doing. So they've had 3,000 plus GPTs created in the matter of months. One GPT that I think is particularly creative and I really love is a bank branch manager GPT, where every year they had 40-something thousand tickets that come into a team of about 9 people to ask some very detailed, challenging questions about how to operate inside of a branch, which, as you can imagine, takes takes a ton of time to read the queue, to research the queue, to get it approved by legal, to then send back out answers, all of which time the bank branch managers are not actually engaging with their customers.
Yeah. So basically the branch manager emailing corporate and being like, hey, what do I do?
Exactly. Hey, what do I do? And they built a GPT to automate the vast majority of this process. So the GPT is able to get in those questions and then provide a pre-populated answer for that team to review. So they're able to do so much more, so much faster, and get their bank branch managers back to doing what they should be doing, which is talking to customers.
Yeah.
Which is something that I think about the how important branch managers are in the U.S. banking system, not only for the largest banks, but also our long tail of regional banks. Like, you can make even in-person conversations much more superhuman by being able to get people better answers faster, all using ChatGPT Enterprise. So I think they've done such a phenomenal job with that rollout and have plans to accelerate that to even more of their employee base.
And what about a Santander? I'm curious too about BNY Mellon.
Yeah. So BNY Mellon has a internal...
Let's back up on who BNY Mellon is, because I feel like they're not a consumer name that most people know, but they're actually one of the largest, most important...
There's one of the largest, most important financial institutions in the U.S. and maybe one of the original financial institutions in the U.S. So they're really a backbone of our banking system. They have something like 50,000 employees, and they've built this internal AI platform called Eliza, which they have about, I think, 50% plus of their employees using on, again, a weekly, daily active basis to review legal briefs, to accelerate and enhance due diligence for compliance, to, again, like take tasks that would have taken weeks to start to take them hours, to start to take them minutes. They have done a phenomenal job with training. So for employees to get access to the Eliza system, you need to go through a mandatory internal training. And they've made it really fun and engaging for employees in the way that people say, thank you so much for giving me access to this tool, because it's making my life a whole lot better. It's making my job a whole lot easier. And I think it's so important with these types of deployments is it's one, you can give technology to people. Unfortunately, with ChatGPT Enterprise, people are used to ChatGPT in their consumer lives. So there's a really easy translation. And for a tool like Eliza, getting people a better understanding of how they can use it and really like how it makes their job easier, better, is so critical. And they've done such a good job. Yeah.
And maybe one more, Santander.
Yeah, Santander, right? Again, one of the largest global banks. They've gone big with AI, and I think it's almost a blend of what you see with BBVA and BNY, where Santander originally had built their own internal platform, like many other banks, like many of our largest customers globally. They start and they say, okay, well, we're going to build using our own data, maybe our own fine-tuned models, maybe our own net new models, our own platform. And sometimes that works, and that can work well, and it can work well for a really long time. But oftentimes what we see is people saying, well, again, actually, like, this is not our core competency. And there are platforms like ChatGPT Enterprise, which are out of the box, really incredible of doing everything that they were trying to build themselves. They're customizable with connectors. They are essentially platform agnostic, so you can plug into a Google suite, a Microsoft suite, et cetera. It's all one hub for your employees to use. And again, something that people are already used to in their consumer lives. And so we've seen Santander make a shift from their own internal platform to going all in on ChatGPT Enterprise, rolling it out. Their first deployment was about 15,000 employees. They plan on doubling that, if not more, by the end of the year. And seeing 20 to 30% productivity gains right off the bat for, again, things like legal, compliance, finance, these parts of the bank that are so critical, mission critical, that really require a intelligent, well-trained human in the loop. But you just start to get those humans in the loop to do superhuman things because they can, again, just do so much more, so much faster.
Yeah. I know I looked up how many bankers had access to ChatGPT or something equivalent. I think 6 months ago, from public data, the nearest you could find was about 1%. I think now it's much higher than that. And in 12 months, I mean, where do you think it will be in 12 months?
I think multiples.
Yeah.
Multiples.
It's going to be getting close to, very high levels of penetration, I think, in the next 12 months. Well, let's shift to what I'm more excited to talk about, which is the fintech examples and use cases. We're going to walk through Ramp, Mercado Libre, Nubank, and then also one new banking app.
Yeah.
And maybe let's start off with Ramp and what you're seeing.
Sure.
Then
Well, yeah, I mean, what I would say in general is some of these banks, they've been taking a lot of the bottoms up approach. Well, how do we first and foremost empower our employees with AI? And fintechs are doing that too. But we're also seeing from the fintechs kind of faster adoption of what is that AI use case, the kind of self-grown, build it yourself and customer facing. So many fintechs have started with customer support. And what I'm really excited to see is an evolution of customer support into not something that's just a cost center, but something that can be a revenue center for you. Mm-hmm. So taking that engagement, because customer support, somebody comes with intent to solve a problem, but then you have a really engaged customer that you can surprise and delight and say, well, actually, I know that you have a trip coming up. So is there something that I can help you with that? Or I know you were interested in maybe refinancing your loan. Is that something that we can help you with? And you have an upsell, cross-sell, and even more importantly, a customer trust opportunity to win in that engagement that historically someone wanted to get in and out of as quickly as possible. Yeah. But when you're helpful, people engage and people start sharing a lot more context and interests and questions. So we're seeing that evolution from a lot of fintechs from customer support to thinking about an actual democratized customer concierge. And we're also starting to see really interesting things like the world of appless banking, what it could be to actually engage, like you would just pick up a phone for a private wealth manager, but bringing that to everybody. So many interesting things. You bring up Ramp. Ramp has been on an absolute tear recently, and they've been a really phenomenal customer and partner of ours. But they've been thinking about how you can build a net new finance stack with agents. Right, an agent is a model that can use a tool and perform tasks. So think about all the tasks that are required in the finance reconciliation process. With Ramp Intelligence and their agent builder, you can start to automate basically end to end, from intake and invoice review to invoice creation to the reconciliation process. So some really interesting, I think, like pushing the boundaries work that they're doing with our APIs.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk through what Nubank is doing?
Sure. So Nubank, the largest digital bank in Brazil. Yep. They have something like 100 million monthly active users. That's 50% of the Brazilian population. They're absolutely massive.
They're huge. They're one of the most successful fintechs of all time. Somewhere over 50 billion, I think.
Absolutely. And they've expanded into Mexico and Colombia. I think they've got ambitions to go even more global. Yeah. And so at the core,
we'll actually be interviewing Christina, the founder of Nubank, at
amazing
conversations.
Amazing. And like so core of what they did from the beginning was be the best bank for the people who were largely rejected by the formal financial system. So at its core was how you could use technology to change the unit economics to actually reach, was so near and dear to my heart, that customer that historically didn't feel comfortable going into a bank branch or was denied a loan. And what they did of putting credit cards into the hands of so many new Brazilians, you just create an entirely new consumer class, an entirely new way that people relate to the formal financial system. So it's unsurprising that Nubank has...
The Brazilian banking system prior to Nubank was very not competitive.
Absolutely not.
I mean, so it's kind of
90% of the market share by the three largest financial institutions. And those financial institutions are also doing some really interesting things in AI, back to the adage of the biggest banks also waking up and moving very quickly. But it's no surprise that Nubank has been a leader in thinking about AI. So they've been building very similar to others, but customer support, thinking about customer concierge. They're also using our models to think about fraud detection. And again, like not only what you can do from the customer outbound perspective, but how you start to really limit or decrease the risks and the costs that are coming.
Yeah. And then Mercado Libre as well. And describe who Mercado Libre is for our American audience.
Another absolute monster within the fintech ecosystem and e-commerce ecosystem. So they're basically the Amazon of LATAM. Maybe Amazon is the Mercado Libre of the US. And you're right there. And they have Mercado Pago, which is one of the largest payment apps in all of Latin America. And they built an internal tool called Verdi, which is used by 17,000 something developers who automate the not only customer support process, but their own product development process. So in a similar vein, right, they've taken early gains on how you can make the customer support super high NPS and much more effective and efficient. And they're also using it for so many other things. So they're also using it for fraud. They're using our APIs and reasoning models to think about catalog management for e-commerce, catalog listing creations. But it's basically involved in every single part of their stack, where they think about, if we have a business challenge, how can using this AI platform that we've built make it better, faster, cheaper. Yeah, it's Mercado Libre and Nubank and Ramp are arguably, right, very large fintechs.
Yeah.
We are kind of V1 leaders in fintechs, but right across the board, we're seeing banks move. We're seeing those very big fintechs move. We're seeing net new startups.
Yeah, I want to talk about net new startups, and people are thinking about, okay, now we have this new platform, which is AI. How do we build completely different experiences? So I think this is a good chance to talk about a conversational banking app.
Yeah. So there's a conversational banking app in Brazil that I've been watching quite closely called Maggie. And WhatsApp is pervasive in many countries, just as the way that you communicate. Voice notes are also incredibly important. And what Maggie allows you to do is send money over WhatsApp to be banked over a messaging platform.
So there's no app to download.
There's no app. There's no app. It would be as simple as me saying, hey Maggie, can you send Rex $20 for an Uber over to the interview? Thank you so much. And then it will send me a confirmation. It will send you a confirmation. So think about the beautiful growth loop that creates. And they're continuing to do more and more. And what I love to see about kind of this new way of thinking about relational banking is it's really for everyone. Everyone knows how to send a text. Everyone knows how to send and receive a voice note. When you can start thinking about using that really easy way of relating and being to financial services, I think some really magical, really cool things will come of it.
Yeah, and that's the thing I'm probably most excited about, is not just like, oh, how do we take our 9 million lines of COBOL and like update them and modernize our cores? Like, how do we create completely new products and experiences? And even for some of the scaled fintech companies, they're largely changing their existing operations and improving them, but there are people who are trying to figure out completely new experiences, which is super exciting. I wanted to talk about, like, let's say you're a banker and you want to be successful in AI. Like, what is your recommendation for someone who's maybe in banking leadership about, like, what should they be doing to make sure that their organization is positioned to be successful?
Well, and I'd say that what I would recommend to a banker is also what I would recommend to a fintech.
And that was my next question,
founder.
and the extent to which
I'll combine the two, because I think AI adoption, while there can be different flavors, there's fundamentally a few learnings that we've seen work really well with people who are adopting better and more quickly and more productively than others. So one is you need to give AI to everyone. And that needs to be empowering. So people are, again, already using ChatGPT at home. They want to use it at work. So first and foremost, putting ChatGPT Enterprise into the hands, and ChatGPT Enterprise, a fully enterprise-grade solution that's used by some of the largest regulated institutions in the world. When you give that to your employees, you are democratizing access to this incredible technology that makes them better at their job. So we see people who are most successful actually going wall to wall and giving it to more people. I think oftentimes people say, well, I want to start with a really small pilot. And what we see is if you start with a really small pilot, you end up just increasing the seats anyways. So you might as well train everyone all at the same time, and then have this flywheel effect that happens where you're suddenly around the water cooler and you're saying, hey, Rex, come look at my bank branch manager GPT that I created. And then that's spawning a new idea or kind of point of creativity for you. So when you deploy it to everyone as quickly as possible, and again, have trainings involved with that, that's kind of fundamentally the starting place. But just like anything, I think like culture is set from the top and ideas can come from the bottom. When you put ChatGPT into the hands of everyone, you have ideas starting to bubble up from the bottom. But that also means that you have to have a cultural, a really kind of like a cultural message from the top that says, we are going to use AI. And this is celebrated. So when that comes from leadership, that's super important. And that's where you start to see really big bets like the one that Morgan Stanley has made to say, we're going to shift our business, or that Santander has made. That comes from the top, but it also, again, comes from having people feeling really empowered to use the technology and talk about it. Where we find that where deployments fail is where employees feel like they have to hide that they're doing their job better with AI, right? Where people have to be like, people are, maybe my job is at risk if I end up being able to do way more in way less time. But we actually see where deployments really work is where people feel like, I want to celebrate the fact that I figured out something that makes my job better. I'm going to share it with somebody else. And then guess what? I have more time to think creatively, problem solve, get back to customer centricity. So it has to come both ways, both bottoms up as well as top down. And I think that the last piece is you just got to get started.
Yeah.
Right? The models today are the dumbest they will ever be. And you have to get started. And when you get started by adopting a kind of platform agnostic piece of technology like ChatGPT Enterprise, is going to continue to get smarter as the models get smarter naturally, because that's how the product is built. But your teams will already know how to use it. So there are a whole host of things that we've seen in a very tactical sense work, like champions networks work really well, celebrating at all hands different use cases of AI that are coming up. But I think all those things compound, but it fundamentally is give it to everybody. It's got to come from ideas come bottoms up. You have to set the cultural tone tops down, and you got to get started.
Yeah. And so that's a little bit of your leadership, do those things. What if you're somebody who wants to get into AI or get into fintech? You're like, oh man, like AI's changed and everything. I don't know if you're going to need to hire a recent college grad. Like, what would your advice be to someone who is a recent college grad and wants to get involved in either fintech or in AI?
I think like what an exciting place to be with at really the start of a new wave, where being able to tinker and play and really be AI native out of the gates, different than you and I, that we've been used to doing our jobs a certain way for a very long time. And so now see AI and it can kind of feel a little bit clunky, and right, it takes some training and some getting used to start to find the use cases. But I'm really excited for that new generation that is coming up as AI native and fundamentally thinking about the world differently. And maybe not taking a part of their job that was always very manual. Your mindset might now be, oh, I never have to do that because I can find a way with AI or some tool that exists. So fundamentally, again, start using the tools and having that mindset of there must be a better way. Because today, whether it's ChatGPT or another tool, there are so many tools within the AI space.
So it sounds like one, just play with these tools.
Just play with the tools, absolutely. And I think what we've also seen is people who start to become leaders inside of some of the largest organizations or fintechs, but are ones that understand these tools and can teach these tools to other people and have ideas of how things can be improved. So it's not rocket science. I think people who are like with the adage of you're not gonna lose your job to AI, but you might lose your job to someone who's using AI. I do fundamentally believe. So the faster people can just start to feel comfortable with this and share those learnings with other people, the better.
And definitely my advice has been that you have to play with these tools. Then the two other things I usually say to folks are, one, just move to the Bay Area, because if you want to work there's a lot of it, maybe also New York, but really primarily the Bay Area. And I'm also curious on your perspective in terms of what roles for recent graduates are most interesting. I tell people, it used to be like product and engineering were sexy and coveted. Now I'm like, forget about that. Just go and be an SDR, because you're going to get hired into a default growing company, and it actually gives you a lot of lateral movement. Like the go-to-market org at OpenAI, for example, is a great org to be like, how are the banks using all of these things? I don't know. Let's talk to Jenny. You actually get some really interesting insights and then flexibility. So I'm curious to hear your perspective in terms of the kinds of roles that new grads should be, or if you think they should move here or, do something else.
I'm incredibly long the Bay. I too am a Bay transplant. I think that the Bay is a home of of innovation and of innovators and people who think differently and want to challenge the status quo of the world. So I wish that I had moved to the Bay sooner. So I'm very long.
Me too.
I'm very long.
I've been here 10 years, which I've been here for 20.
I had been here longer.
Yeah.
And I just bought a house, so I don't plan on leaving. We're doubling down here. And let me tell you, buying a house also makes you very bullish on what you can change in the fintech sector, because sending a wire to escrow is still a brutal
It's a little terrifying.
It's a little terrifying.
Congrats on the new house. Tell us also how you used AI to inform yourself on the home buying journey, because it's quite helpful for big financial transactions like these.
Oh yeah. The whole way through. From the search process, even helping us think about a language for myself and my partner of what we wanted in a house, what we were looking for, what we could afford.
What do you mean for the search? Like, were you doing natural language searches, or like just to interview you and come up with criteria?
Using ChatGPT as an advisor, of saying like, we are like describing a little bit about us and what we like, and like what we should think about, what questions we should ask, like going in and talking to a realtor and showing up with a list of questions to try to get answered, as opposed to stumbling through that initial conversation being like, I don't even know what I should be asking you.
Yeah. If you had to choose between having access to a realtor or having access to a ChatGPT during
maybe
what would you choose?
Both. I mean, our realtor has been incredibly helpful.
I would say the Bay Area is kind of a screwy market. There's a lot of old houses, and like, there are other markets where it's like, I probably don't need a realtor.
Maybe not, but I think what our realtor was able to do is handhold us through this very emotional, big life decision, and that and ChatGPT I think would be really helpful. But back to your question around jobs, I love your idea around SDRs. Right? I came into OpenAI, I didn't come from a traditional sales background, although you could make an argument that venture and being a founder is fundamentally a sales job. But what we need is first principles thinkers, people who can come in and see challenges and want to fix them and figure out the fastest, best, right way to do that. And then also know that it's constantly changing. Like, I've been at OpenAI now for almost 2 years, which makes me a bit of a dinosaur at the company. But what I always say when everybody comes in is the half-life of our technology is what, 2 weeks? The half-life of this company is what, 2-3 weeks? So we're all new all the time, all together. And that's really exciting. It can be really exhausting. But that type of, I think, spirit, particularly somebody coming in, where if you're hungry, you know how these tools can help you and can help the team, and you just want to solve big problems, there's going to be space for you. And I think like something I love about fintech is, and like financial services, it's an excuse to learn about everything. Like fundamentally, I do believe like fintech is everything. Payments touches everything.
Money connects a lot of things.
Money connects a lot of things. It is like, it's fundamentally how so many systems work. So what a fun career that you get to be exposed to everything. AI is a lot like that too. So I think people who are very systems, kind of core technology minded, puzzle minded, if you love those parts about fintech, you're going to love those parts about AI. And stepping into AI, I too have been able to work with my connectivity to the world of fintech and that network has only really gotten stronger, when my job is fundamentally to say, this incredible technology that I think is going to change the world, how can I help you use it? Figure out what those right use cases are. It's so fun.
And I'm excited to revisit this conversation in like another 12 months and see what else has changed in the world of AI for banks and for fintechs. I mean, just 9 months ago when I talked to James, there was like one bank, it was like Morgan Stanley. There's like one story. Yeah. And then we already talked about how maybe like less than 1% of bankers actually had access to AI or something like ChatGPT at work. What do you think it looks like in the next 12 months? I mean, just from the access to these tools, it's going to hit 100%, I think, in the next 12 months. But like, what else?
I think the ubiquity of these tools is coming.
Yeah.
And what we're already seeing and hearing that evolution over the last 12 months is people are showing up at work and saying, where's my AI tool? Yeah. It's a requirement. And that I think is only going to continue, and will likely shift buying cycles, shift just like what your onboarding process is like. It's like, here's your email, here's your AI. Like, And I think there's a world where AI will come with you. We just launched our ecosystem a few weeks ago at Dev Day, for the ability of ChatGPT to show up not only in other places, but have other places show up inside of ChatGPT. So this flywheel is really alive and well, but still only the earliest days. And the connectivity of that to the financial ecosystem, I'm personally really excited about.
Yeah, I think in the next 12 months, we'll basically be through the install phase of like people getting access. But in terms of what that actually means, it's a lot harder to predict post-install all the things people will apply it to. But that's why we'll have this conversation again in another 12 months.
I look forward to it.
Awesome. You're super fun. And thanks for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.